So, Francis, how does it feel to have finally reached your ultimate goal, the presidency?
You know, Claire, when you move up the ladder of power, it's hunt or be hunted.
But Francis, shouldn't we be hunting big bankers this time?
Ha! Claire, I should have never exposed you to the power of the credit union difference.
And I should have never made you president of CUNA.
I love that woman like a shark loves blood. Ladies and gentlemen, we had to think of something different, right? We are not Frank and Claire Underwood. I'm Jim, and this is Karen Nussle, and we are honored to be at our first GAC. Thank you. Take your seats right over here. Thank you. Have you downloaded the app?
I have.
You've downloaded the app. You've got the conference app. Are you tweeting? Are you guys tweeting that out? You are. Do you know how to tweet? You do. Okay. Well, all right. My hashtag that I want you to be using is CUNA GAC, and if you haven't already followed my Twitter feed, I am at Nussle, N-U-S-S-L-E. Taylor Swift, I'm told, has 60 million followers. We have 100 million members. I think we can match that today, right? So tweet it out and let's get started. We're going to have a good time today. And one thing that I thought of just walking out here is that my mother would never believe that there's this many people, not only that I get to speak to, but that are actually listening. She wouldn't believe it. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a picture and send it to her. I'm going to do one big GAC selfie. So I'm going to need you to smile. Hold on. All right, see if I can do this now. See, you need to smile a little bit here. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. There we go. All right. Send this to her, will you? All right. And that'll be out on the Twitter feed as well. So where did they put my notes? There, I think there must be up here. I want to start by saying thank you. You know, there's a lot of people that make something like this work, and a lot of work goes into this. The CUNA staff just have done a fantastic job of putting together the GAC. I know they have some experience in doing it, but I got to tell you, when we walked in the hall for the very first time, we were blown away. This is an amazing conference that I know so many of you have been part of for so long. We do have over 500 new folks, but many of you have been coming to the GAC for quite some time. We want to welcome you back. We've got a lot of work to do, and we've got a powerful, powerful message that we want you to bring to your folks in Washington. So I want to thank the CUNA staff. I also want to thank the CUNA board that are here. I think they're sitting up here in the front row. They picked me, right? So I got to thank them. You know what it's like to serve a board, right? So thank you to the board for selecting me and giving me the honor to help lead the credit union movement. You know, it seems like as Karen and I were watching the video backstage, some of those pictures are pretty young and old. If you didn't notice, it kind of went by a little fast, but there are 2 pictures in that video display that are from my very first 2 meetings that I had with the Iowa credit unions when they came to be advocates to me about the credit union movement. And luckily, Pat Jury found them. I don't know if they were in his desk drawer somewhere, but he found them and he sent them to me, and we incorporated them into the video. And the reason I thought it was so important to incorporate them is because that's where I started. That's where I started. I'm not sure sometimes how I got here, but that's where I started. And I can tell you part of the reason that I'm standing here today is because of their advocacy. The folks from Iowa, they knew when I came to Congress, I didn't know much about credit unions back in 1990. I wasn't a credit union member. In fact, most of the financial institutions I'd been exposed to were banks. So I had some learning to do, and they had some teaching to do. And just like all of you, when you go hike the hill, singing that message to Congress, to policymakers, and to their staff is vitally important. And that message is a personal one. Not just, as I said during the video, it's not just what you do. It's how you do it and who you do it for that really, I believe, is the secret sauce as you talk to policymakers of the future. And I had a chance to go out and look at some of the Uniting for Good stories that are out there. There were 3 that caught my eye immediately. The one about the folks, the credit unions in the St. Louis community area that collaborated to help low and moderate income folks with financial education and affordable loans. What a great story of how they're connecting and people serving people in their very own community. Or the credit unions in Fox City that banded together and helped stock the shelves of their food pantries. And over $286,000 just since 2009 have been contributed to help people who just need maybe a little extra food in their own grocery bag. Or last year, the GAC credit unions raising more than $10,000 for the folks in Washington State who've been ravaged by some of the wildfires. These stories go on and on. The United for Good storyboards that you see in our hallway out here are just the tip of the iceberg. Each one of you has a story you can deliver here in Washington and across your states as you not only talk to policymakers, but as you convince people to be part of the credit union movement. And I learned from my Iowa credit unions the most sacred relationship of all, and that's the member, serving the member, members serving members. Different than any other financial institution, when you walk in that front door and you sit across the table, you're sitting across from another member. They're a partner. They're there to help you. They're there because probably they've been in that very same mud puddle with you before, and they know what you're dealing with. And that kind of partnership is a bond that really you can't find anywhere else. And it's those kind of stories that I think are important to make sure we deliver when you're here in Washington. So how did I get from Capitol Hill to here at the GAC stage? Well, you can ask the selection committee what they were looking for. I'll tell you what they told me, and I'll do my best to report honestly what they expected. What they told me, Susan Streifel and the folks on the board that went through that process, they told me time and time again they want bold leadership. That's what they expected in the next president of CUNA. And so, of course, I asked the question, what's bold leadership, right? And I got some interesting answers. They weren't all consistent. Some people thought bold leadership meant one thing. Some meant maybe that it meant another. So rather than just take their word for it, I decided to ask you. And so the first couple of days of the GAC, I took a microphone and a camera, and I went out and I interviewed some of you and asked you the question, what do you expect from the new guy? And what do you think bold leadership might look like to you? So let's look at that videotape. Do you know there's a new guy leading the Credit Union National Association?
That's the word on the street, yes.
It's on the street?
It is.
You know anything about the new guy?
I've never met him before.
What I have been reading on the emails that we've received.
Yes, and I don't recall his name.
I heard something about that. Jim, right?
It's Jim Nussle. I follow him on Twitter.
I've been told that he is out traveling incognito today, and so I was just wondering, what do you know about the new guy?
I've heard he's a great leader and that he's going to move us forward and move us into even bigger and greater things.
I believe he came from a lobbying background, and I think that's going to bring some fresh perspective to taking CUNA forward. I've been impressed so far with what he's done in terms of reorganization of the association itself, and look forward to seeing what comes out of that.
I've been reading about him, and he's very dynamic.
What advice would you give the new guy leading CUNA? What kinds of things should they keep in mind?
Well, I think, any credit unions are member-owned organizations, and members obviously come first, and I think you have to be open and willing to listen to your membership and respond appropriately.
Listen to the credit unions and don't listen to the bankers.
Bankers are not your friend.
Send the strongest message to Congress that we possibly can about the benefits of credit union membership and what we're doing for economic development in our communities.
Kind of get out there, meet all the credit unions, see see what's going on in the industry, what things are affecting credit unions of different sizes and different fields of membership.
You know, I think one of the things that gets overlooked, my credit union is relatively small. We're about 150 million in assets. And I think we really need an advocate for the impact of regulation on our smaller credit unions.
I would say be open-minded, be willing to listen.
I would recommend you think outside the box, look at things differently, come in with a whole different perspective on things, and let's shake this place up.
Now, the CUNA board has told him to be a bold leader. What would being a bold leader mean to you?
I would say don't be afraid to be, to push why credit unions are better. There's a lot of options out there, and consumers do have a lot of choices, and credit unions really are the best option. Don't be afraid to say that. Don't be afraid to push credit unions to be proud of that.
To me, it means speaking out to the public, to Congress, to everybody else, and telling them in a forceful way how important credit unions are to the people of this country.
Making the tough decisions that probably should have been made a while ago, listening, taking it all into account, and making the right decisions for the right reasons.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. By the way, I'm the new guy. Jim Nussle. I'm the new guy.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Jim Nussle.
Figured as much.
You do a great job at
Well,
this.
it's my day job. I moonlight this way. It's how I pick up some extra change, You probably know this, but there is no shortage of advice in the credit union movement, right? Well, I decided my first few months to really take the opportunity to listen and learn. Because there's so many people who have dedicated their lives, their hearts, their passion, their industry to this movement. And I thought it would be important to listen to all of you. And that's why I did not only that fun video, but I've tried to be a very careful listener to what you had to offer and what you had to suggest to me. And I learned three things that I thought kept coming up constantly about what you expected from the new guy. The first was to revitalize the value proposition for CUNA and the leagues. In other words, if we're going to be a strong association, delivering the kind of partnership we need to deliver for all of you so that you can be the best partners to the Americans and to your credit unions, then we've got to revitalize and constantly look at the value of CUNA and the leagues, how we can deliver that service excellence and ensure that we're doing everything to serve you as members. And so that was the first thing I learned, and so we're working on that. The second thing that constantly was told to me was we need to unite the credit union movement, and we want you to challenge us. We don't want to just continue doing the same old status quo, kind of lowest common denominator sort of approach to the way we work and operate as a credit union movement. You asked me to push you, and so I'm going to try and do a little bit of pushing today, and we'll see how it goes over. The third thing you told me was advocacy is job one. The most important service delivery that I can do, that we can do, that together with our league partners we can all do together is deliver on advocacy, to remove the barriers between you, your credit unions, and your members so that in fact you can be their best financial partner. And usually somewhere in the conversation, sometimes it was toward the end of the conversation, but it almost always happened, somebody would lean into me and they'd say, we want to win, and we want to win big. That's what they told me. Do you want to win? All right. Well, if in fact advocacy is job one, and if in fact we've got some work to do in order to be winning, I was trying to think of a way to describe what I mean by advocacy in a 360-degree way. There's all sorts of fancy words you can put toward it. There's all sorts of strategies and tactics you can employ. But the one that I wanted to kind of get across to you is one that's a personal one. It has to do with my dad. My dad was a choir director for 50 years outside of the city of Chicago. And he's been there. There he is. That's my dad. 50-year volunteer choir director. He just retired this year. That's his last performance. All right? And what I learned from him, yeah, you can applaud. And I thought about this because I think often we need to act like a choir in our advocacy, in our messaging. We need to work more in concert with one another. So I asked my dad, I said, so what are the principles you learned at directing choirs? And he said, there's a couple of very simple ones. He said, the first one, believe it or not, is listen. That good choirs listen to one another. You would think that the first rule of being a choir is singing, but it's not, it's listening. Because if you don't listen to one another, you have no perspective. You don't know how you sound, right? And you don't know how the rest of them sound. You can't blend together. So the first rule of choirs is listening, and I thought that would probably be good for all of us too. I think sometimes we're ready to go run off in one direction. It's true for me, I know. Sometimes we get ahead of steam, maybe true for you. And we got to stop and we have to say, how does this affect everybody? If it's true that choirs are maybe the best example of a musical cooperative, then the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And how do we focus that energy, all right? So that was the first rule. The second rule is that we've got to sing off the same sheet of music, right? In order to be a good choir, you got to be using the same music. And we all know that, that means that we've got to do a better job of formulating our message and making sure that it can come across. The third rule of being a good choir is that everybody can and should contribute, but you've got to blend your voices. Sometimes you're singing the melody, sometimes you're on harmony, sometimes your section's a little quieter than the rest of them. How many of you have sang in a choir before? You know what I'm talking about. In fact, tomorrow we're going to have the Howard University Gospel Choir. You're going to see this play out for you. You're going to see exactly how that dynamic plays out in one of the most excellent choirs on the planet. Well, of all of those things that he taught me, I think probably the biggest one is that if we're going to work together, we've got to understand our challenges, we've got to get our sheets of music together, and the final thing is we've got to practice, practice, practice. That was the one thing he told me that he drilled into his folks every single time. So we need to practice as well if we're going to be successful. And the reason why this is important is that our challenges have never been greater. The challenges that we have facing us, whether it's here in Washington or at our state capitals or within the movement or outside in the industry, have never been greater. Just think of what's going on here, right here in Washington, D.C. We've got challenges on Capitol Hill. These are folks who cannot even agree whether water is wet or whether the sky is blue, right? They don't talk to one another, and that's just within the same party. I'm not even talking about Democrats and Republicans. They can't agree on anything. We have to be good advocates within that kind of atmosphere and dynamic, and that's going to be difficult. The other thing, of course, and I can tell you about this firsthand, is that they're all going to want to tell you what you want to hear. And until you have a vote, you can't get them off square one. So we got to figure out ways to get them off of the, oh yeah, sure, we're with you. The we're with you answer is there almost every single time you go in and talk to them. I did it too, so I can tell you all about it. All right? We got to figure out how to get them off of that. The third big challenge we've got is that we have activist regulatory agencies that think they know best and are out there promulgating all sorts of rules and regulations and making compliance our most important focus. We shouldn't have to be serving the bureaucracy in Washington more than we serve our members. But we have, just since 2009, even though it wasn't the credit unions that caused the downfall and the financial crisis, 119 new rules from over a dozen federal agencies involving 6,000 pages of regulation. I realize I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You live this. But think about it. That's more than War and Peace in the Bible stuck together. You have to know just to open your doors in the morning. That makes no sense at all. And so we have to make sure we continue bringing our voice to those agencies. We also face merchant irresponsibility. folks that are out there being disrespectful of the data, of the way they have to do it, and frankly, they ought to be held to the same standard we are in handling the data of their customers. And then finally, there's a historical turnover, and this is the point I want to make. We're not the only choir in the church, okay? These folks are brand new on Capitol Hill. Since 2009, 60% turnover. 6 out of 10 members of Congress and senators weren't there if you came in during the Bush administration. They're all new. They all need to hear our song, brand new, as though we've never sung it before. We've got to take that not only to them, but to their staffs. And that's why you're here today. And I know, I'm singing to the choir, right? It's not the folks in this room that need to hear this message. You've been doing this. You know what you're doing. But I want to encourage you, because I think in order for us to be successful, we're going to have to work even harder and smarter than ever before if we're going to be successful. And I think there are ways that we can do that. I was looking at this, and I believe my encouragement for you is about engagement. That's really what this is about. How do we engage our membership in advocacy? And if we're going to be successful, we need a good defense, but I think we also need a very strong offense. And I believe that's what you're expecting from the new guy at CUNA, is a new offense. Well, offense to me is a simple formula. Offense comes from strength. Strength comes from our members. And if we're going to be successful in advocacy, we have to engage our members. And this is the reason, simple formula, and that is politicians listen to people, because people vote, not associations. And so if we're going to be the kind of strong organization we need in order to bring our message to Washington even more effectively and go on offense, then we're going to have to engage people that have never been engaged before. And we've got building blocks that we can use to do that, all right? Just think about the people, not only in this room, but ought to have skin in the game. 6,400 credit unions represent, so we have 6,400 CEOs that ought to be here today, right? And 80,000 boards of directors that have direct skin in the game and should be the most passionate members of this choir that we have. Not to mention 250,000 employees that work for your credit unions. That's 350,000 people right there who have skin in the game. And if we can't count on them, it's going to be difficult for us not only to go on offense, but for us to be successful in engaging whole new members. Well, I decided to ask the question of all of you as part of this video, walking the street that I did, who you thought were some of the most effective lobbying organizations in Washington, to get your perspective on this. Let's see what you had to say. Are you familiar with effective lobbying organizations in Washington? And if you are, which ones do you think are the most effective in being good lobbyists, being good advocates for their cause? What organizations come to mind?
Well, I don't know if you can debate whether or not they're good or not, but one that stands out in my mind is the NRA. The NRA has been incredibly effective for an organization that has only a couple million members, but continuously holds legislators' feet to the fire and gets what they want out of it.
The National Rifle Association and the Israeli, the PAC that represents the Jewish American interests in Israel.
I think one of the ones is the Retailers Association. That association has a very strong, powerful voice. Small, independent business owners that are trying to communicate, protect their businesses and help the same communities that we are.
Well, I know that the pharmaceuticals are effective. The doctors, lawyers, they're effective, but I think we're effective too, because our members are study being credit union members, and they know that if they come to the credit union that they're going to get a good deal.
Well, that would be CUNA, of course.
CUNA, of course.
Certainly, I think the credit unions themselves are they are right in the heart of all the issues, and they're the ones that I think are best to speak to the issues and support the issues that are important to us.
We're there for the members and only for the members.
Also AARP.
Why do you think the AARP is so effective in getting their voice across?
I think they're very good at communicating to their members and getting the message out to what is important to them and what could affect them, and getting in front of those things before they get to them.
There's a large, growing population of retired folks in the country, and they're folks that we have to take care of. They're the people that have paved the path before us, and I think that message of how do we take care of that increasing number of retired folks across the country, that's part of why they're very, very effective.
They've been very active in social media, very active in email, getting senior citizens or people over the age of 50, 55 involved in surveys and getting their opinions and their feedback of what they really are looking for as an organization for AARP to represent for them.
They pretty much sign up everybody as a member the day they turn, was it now 55? So
Are you asking me or are you telling me? Yeah, and I can tell you, they do it. I'm not even 55 and I've got an AARP card. Damn it anyway. But it's the reason why they're so effective, because they go to Washington, they come here to Capitol Hill, and the whole place starts shuddering. It just starts shaking. The dome is cracking whenever they go up there. The politicians just cower behind the AARP. And why? Because they engage their members. They directly engage their members. So if we want to go on offense, if we want to start winning, we've got to directly engage our members. And we have a plan to do that. It's called the Member Activation Program. And a number of you have already been involved in that. We have a number of CEOs that have already worked with their boards and their employees to engage their members in advocacy. And the interesting thing about it, you're going to hear more about it on this stage. Tony Boudet is going to come up and give us a presentation about that and how it worked in his credit union in Texas and how it's worked across the country. And the interesting thing about it, and I don't know why anyone should be surprised about this, but your members love you. I mean, really, they love you and they want to be more engaged in what you do. And Tony found out, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think it was 82% more people of his members wanted to be more involved and wanted to do more business with the credit union as a result of using the Member Activation Program. So here's my first challenge. Shame on me if I don't challenge you as CEOs and boards to go back and take very strong consideration of the Member Activation Program and get them involved. Don't come talk to me and tell me that we need to be on offense and we need to be winning if you're not willing to talk to your boards and your members and get them involved in the credit union movement. And what do we hope to accomplish? Well, we've got a winning agenda, I think. It's certainly the ones that we can do right now, even before we broaden our base, are pretty powerful. We've got to make sure that we protect our not-for-profit tax status, because that's the difference. Because of what we do and how we do it and who we do it for, we deserve to be able to maintain that, even in an era where there's going to be continued talk about tax reform. We need to go up to Congress and tell them to stop the data breaches and to start treating our membership data and the data of customers the same way financial institutions are asked to do it. And you need to go up there and tell your story about regulatory reform and relief. You need to make this personal. You need to let them know about how this is costing you time and energy and effort and paperwork and compliance and all sorts of things, which takes away our ability to serve our members. We don't want to serve the bureaucracy. We need and deserve to serve our members. And with risk-based capital too, yes, there were improvements, but this is still a rule, in my estimation, that is a solution in search of a problem that did not exist with the credit union industry, and we need to continue to push to make that an even better rule before they have an opportunity to make it final. Those are things we can do right now. Those are things we can do right now, but we're going to have to build a much bigger choir if we want to take on the next bucket of things, next bucket of challenges, like member business lending and exempting credit unions from the CFPB. We need to make sure if we're going to do, we need to build a much, much stronger choir. And then we can go after the big kahuna. Do you realize that the last time the Congress paid any attention to credit unions in any kind of concerted way to modernize what we do and recognize our importance in the marketplace was back when Babe Ruth was playing baseball? And the Model A Ford was the car of choice, and John Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde were robbing banks which you can decide for yourself whether that was good or not. But the point is that it's been since 1934 since we have modernized and enhanced the charter for credit unions and made sure that credit union membership was available to all Americans, and we need to take that on with a much bigger choir and a much stronger movement. But just so we're clear, and I want to be very clear about this because of what you whispered in my ear about winning. Winning to me is not a rose garden ceremony. I've been in the rose garden of the White House. The roses don't smell any better than the ones you grow in your backyard. I realize that may sound like a lot of fun to be able to go get a bill signed. And sometimes that's going to be what we have to do. But winning to me is bigger than that. For us to be winning, we need to be growing. I want our market share to increase. I want our credit union opportunity to be available to whole new generations. We have young people that have never been exposed to credit unions. We have new Americans that have never been exposed to credit unions, Hispanics and others that are coming here needing what we have to offer and are thirsty for the message that we can deliver to them. So for me, winning is growing. So we have a great opportunity, I believe, to grow, to win, and to be successful. So with you, I'm ready to sing. I don't know about you, and I'm ready to grow, and I'm ready to lead. And with you, we're ready to win. So let's go do it. Thank you very much.